You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston and Chris Trent, episode number 95.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, your hosts, Jody Livingston and Chris Trent.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. If it's your first time checking out the show and listening, welcome. We are glad to have you today. And if you're a returning listener, perhaps a member of this super secret podcast group, well, we're glad you're here as well. If you enjoy the show, make sure you subscribe to it so you can get it each and every time it comes out, whether that is through iTunes or Spotify or your favorite podcast player. That way you don't miss anything. You're always in the loop. Yeah?
Yep. Hey, Jody is a youth pastor in California. I'm a youth pastor in Georgia. We love doing youth ministry. We are youth pastors full-time. Been doing this a little while, but we also love investing in other youth pastors, helping them to experience longevity, both in their current role, but also potentially long-term as a career. So we like to help out with that. And we feel like having successful youth ministry will help you get there with some of those things. So that's what this is all about and why we do what we do. So thanks for listening. And if you're new, we really are glad you're here. If you're one of our folks that's returning, man, thanks for coming back. Like Jody said, we really do appreciate y'all trusting us with your time. We don't take that for granted. And hopefully we're providing you with some good content that'll help you along the way and be encouraging.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of podcasts to listen to. So we're grateful that you're listening to this one. If you care to know what's happening, you can. We are out there in the webosphere, social media stuff. Chris Trent, Jody Livingston. Although don't expect to find a lot of youth ministry things.
Nope.
Disney, yes, for you. Magic,
funny.
yes, for you.
Yeah. I don't do magic on Instagram, bro.
Chewies, yes.
Yeah.
I just posted about Volkswagens, and
that's it. We're a little bit more than that. A lot of graduation stuff for me right now from my son having graduated. So
that's a big deal, though.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Big deal. Yep. How's your summer going? Hey, it's so summer. We're, this will be coming out in the middle of the summer. Obviously, recording kind of, ahead of time
Before
to survive the summer. We've not been secretive about that. But that said, here's a question. I'm curious. When you think about summer, Jody, what has been one of the best summers that comes to mind? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Ever.
Well, let's think maybe in youth ministry. We'll kind of narrow it down.
Oh, man. Jeez. I think youth ministry.
They all start to run together, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They all feel the same. Like I start thinking, oh, well, I can think of moments at camp that were really good. Some summers, like just, man, camp was so good, and mission trips that were really good. And if I had to pick, as crazy as this sounds, way back when I was first starting and didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Not that I know a whole lot now, but we did just kind of an impromptu trip, sort of. I mean, we had a plan, but it was a smaller ministry at the time, really small, and so we just kind of loaded up and took off towards the mountains, and for like a few days and a week of stuff, and there wasn't a lot of pressure. I didn't feel a lot of pressure at that time, and didn't know any better. Had a couple of great youth workers that we were just kind of blessed to have, and spent some time at a cabin hanging out that my family had, and then went and camped out a little. And I still think about that. It was super fun. We just made up some events, activities that we were going to do while we were there, and we went and explored some caves and did some hiking. And
yeah, that's good. That's good.
It was good because it wasn't like over planned. It wasn't like super. I mean, it was planned, but it wasn't. There wasn't like this. Oh man, okay, we have to have devotion every, twice a day, and we just kind of end up around a campfire every night, sit and talk about life and Jesus. That was good. What
That's
about you?
really good. It's hard to narrow down. I probably should have thought about my own answer before I asked the question. But what keeps popping in my mind is I do miss the summers when my kids were younger.
Yeah.
My personal kids were younger, tagging along on some of those summer events. But we just had a couple summers where, camp has just been huge, and along with our mission trip to Dallas, along with our trip with sixth graders, and those are good, man. I like summer. I love summers in youth ministry. They're busy, but I love them. They really are the time to really hang out in the midst of that. Typically vacation as well. So lots of good.
I love summers in May.
Yeah.
I don't always love them in August.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
no, I don't know what do you mean?
Like when I'm sitting looking ahead at summer, I'm always super excited for it. But by the time I get to the end of summer,
you're typically worn out. Yeah, there's no doubt.
I'm ready for the school year. But I do love. I'm with you though. I love that season. But I'm glad it's just a summer. If it was all the time, I'd die. If that was if you were always doing camps and always doing mission trips and always doing, that would be. But yeah,
cool. Summer's good. Well, hopefully a good episode based on one of our listeners today. We'll talk about that maybe in a minute, but today we're going to be talking about a lot of the times this takes place in the summer, and that's mission trips.
Yep.
But how to build discipleship into short-term missions, both before, during, after the trip. And so we're going to kind of dig into that here. I'm guessing you've had some pretty awesome mission trip experiences as well. Hey, Jody.
Yeah. Awesome and not so awesome. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. Same here. Some really great ones and some not so great. And this came from the podcast group. This came out. We've done a few of those. This is a question that was asked there. So
a guy named Josiah Holland actually sent this on he sent it on our page actually, but Josiah asked this question. I thought it was a great idea, and it's timely in the sense that summer is whenever for us, whenever we do missions at other times as well, but it's a huge part of what we do. Spring break, it's a huge part for us also, but I'm literally in the process of getting ready for our trip to Dallas, and it's a huge part of who we are here at my church at Johnson Ferry as well. So whenever he asked this question, I was like, oh, this is where my heart is, man. I'd love to talk about this. So that's why we made the decision to go ahead and jump into this thing. So
yeah, super fun. I think it'll be really helpful for especially if you're just kind of getting started in this, or you're not quite sure, you've never really led a mission trip, or even if you have, but just haven't felt like you've been as intentional as maybe you need to be. Hopefully today will be helpful for you. So some good things.
I think I've got some ideas that'll help with that. And I think you do as well. So
yeah, cool. So great. We'll jump into that. Before we do, we want to be sure to thank our sponsors. We love these guys. Appreciate their support for the show. YM360. They actually have some great mission trip resources as well for you. So head over to ym360.com. Be sure to use the promo code Longer Haul, and you can save 20% there on everything. No, on most things. But whether you're looking for curriculum for the fall or thinking through camp for next year, I know that's open now, or some mission trip stuff. Those guys are great. We love them. And then also the guys down in Georgia with studentministrynetwork.com. We appreciate them. Tons of free resources and helps on there as well. And so we're grateful for both of them and for their support and helping make the show happen. So you ready to jump in?
I am. I'm ready. Let's do this thing.
All right, here we go.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
So this was one that you really, man, this stood out. You jumped on this quick. You like this, certainly something that you're passionate about,
Big time.
and something you guys do. And so obviously we've talked about missions before, and we both do tons of mission trips. But I know this is such a part of the culture of your church and your DNA. And I do know that you specifically are super intentional when it comes to missions and this idea. So we thought it would be fun for you to kind of talk a little bit about that and kind of maybe lead out through it and just share some of kind of that process and what you guys are doing and some takeaways for some guys. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. It is something that I'm super passionate about. And I think part of it is, we joke when we talk about games and stuff. A lot of times I've joked about the whole Jimmy Fallon way of doing games, where it's one thing to do a game, but it's another thing to do it like Jimmy Fallon does a game, which he goes all extra mile on it and takes it to the next level and does all that. And I would say that about mission trips. For me, short-term missions, it's one thing to kind of say, hey, we want to go to wherever, and we do this thing and we sign up maybe even through an organization and we go, and that's the experience. But it's completely different if you want to take and really leverage this for an overall discipleship focused thing. And that's where you really have to ask yourself some questions like, hey, what am I going to do beforehand leading up to the trip? What am I going to do during the trip? And you got to talk about what you're going to do after the trip related to that. And then what you end up doing is you leverage the entire experience for an overall discipleship moment for the kids in your group. And before you know it, I really believe this, you may find yourself in a situation like ours, which is the main thing we do is missions. Like it is the defining moment. Matter of fact, we have more kids attend our mission trips than we do camp. Love camp, but we have more kids attend the mission trip experiences that we do than we do camp. So I think the part of the reason why is because we're not just going, there's a whole process involved. So what if I kind of talk about before, and Jody, you just kind of jump in as we go and help me make sure I'm being clear on these things, and then during and then after. So here's some tips for you related to that if you're starting to, consider what I'm saying here and maybe something you're interested in trying to be a part of. So I would say a huge part of it, if you're going on a short-term mission trip and you want to emphasize discipleship, one thing you have to do is you have to commit to meeting ahead of time, leading up to the trip itself. I would say a minimum of four meetings. And I'm not going to be legalistic about that if you decide to do 3, whatever. But I think 4 at least, maybe even 6, depending on how big of a trip and how many people are going. But meeting ahead of time and then building in community in those meetings, even if it's not necessary for the trip. Now, here's what I mean by that. I think you ought to have family groups for the trip, regardless of whether or not they're necessary. You may be going somewhere where you don't have to have your kids grouped up into family groups of some type.
Okay, so wait, describe when you say family group, for those who wouldn't know what that means, what is that?
Yeah, so family group would be where you take all of your kids and you take the leaders that are going and you take that one leader and you say, okay, well, these 4 kids are in your group or these 8 kids are in your group, and y'all are going to live and breathe together on this trip. We go as far, now a lot of this depends on the size of your group, right? But we go as far as saying, and on this mission trip, there's a good chance that you're not going to be with your friends in your family group. So your 5 or 6 people are going to be people that you don't really know. Now it gets a little more complicated if you're only taking 15, and I understand that. But intentional groups that are where you're hoping that they're going to have conversations together, fun together, and build community together. But in the process of that, what happens is during those meetings, if you're doing things and you're giving them time together, they're going to have conversations that's going to lead to discipleship.
Right.
So typically what you would do, let's say you have a 2-hour training to get ready to go, to your trip to Pittsburgh or whatever. And that in Pittsburgh, you're going to be doing backyard Bible club. So you're going to have to prepare for that. You're going to have to do some training for that. And maybe you're also going to have to sometime do some evangelism training. By the way, if you're doing short-term mission trips with your kids and you're not doing evangelism training, teaching them how to share the gospel, like literally have conversations with people, you're probably missing something there, because how are you going to go on a mission trip? And because kids don't know that intuitively, so you're doing all this training, but and maybe you're doing even worship and maybe even a little devotional as part of that training, but having a moment where you're going to break up into your family groups and you providing some questions for them to talk about and let them pray together and experience together. That's what helps build that community. And as a result of that, discipleship takes place.
Yeah.
Especially if you've trained those leaders.
And do you give those leaders like any kind of guidance or like an outline or a certain thing that they're doing and following?
Yeah, it depends on the meeting and what's got to happen, because sometimes it's like you have to go through this thing, but sometimes it's, hey, talk about this around your table, or talk about this in your group.
More from the front. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so let me back up a little. So leading into the mission trip, are you doing application for students who want to go? Do you do interviews for that? Do you?
Yeah, so we're going to get into the weeds here for a second if we're not too careful.
And I know that let me say this. I understand that varies probably with age, like junior high kids versus high school kids.
Well, no, I would say it varies with church too. And here's what I mean. And here's why I think
yeah.
we're getting into the weeds. But here, so we take anybody and everybody on mission trips.
Okay.
At our church. That's a philosophical decision on our part. And that includes lost kids. Like we'll take if we have a kid that's up front saying, I just don't know. I know that sounds nuts to some people. But we really do take any and everybody. Now, and so I used to be of the mindset to go on a mission trip, man, that's like the extra committed, and there's an application and you got to do all this stuff. First of all, if you're making them fill out applications, but you're really taking everybody anyway, don't waste people's time, please. I'm just throwing it out as a parent has to do, I don't know. Just don't waste me. As a parent who has to do this kind of stuff all the time, and I'm just saying, just don't waste my time with making me do stuff I don't have to do. So we take everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, I know your primary trip that you're talking about right now is Dallas. Would you still have that same take everybody philosophy if it was out of the country?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do.
I'm just asking because I think somebody would
That's a great
sitting there listening going, oh yeah, okay, I could see that. But if I'm taking somebody's kid out
some of the biggest decisions I've ever, and most life-changing decisions I've ever seen kids make have been in other countries on these time trips.
Yeah.
There's something about a senior in high school about to go off to college standing in Peru.
Yeah.
That God can just wreck them in that moment and get a hold of their hearts, and we'll talk about the on the trip discipleship part of that, but it's those meetings leading up to that, all of those moments. Now, I say that there is a basic expectation about, you can't just sign up for the meeting and go or sign up for the trip and go if you're not willing to come to the meetings.
Right.
But even then I kind of say, well, I try to be realistic and go and just have each conversation with each. But if some kid is like, yeah, I want to go to Dallas, but I can never come to the meetings on Sunday night at all. I'm like, yeah, maybe
this isn't the trip.
This is not the best trip for you. And that can be hard depending on the size of your church. I have the momentum of being big and lots of layers, and lots of people are told no about things, but again, I just am not a fan of but this is just me, and I'm not saying that it has to be this. I'm just not a fan of making it out to be some exclusive, super Christian only thing.
Yeah.
And I understand where it comes from. I understand, well, if you're going on this trip, telling us about Jesus, you need to be walking with Jesus. I understand where that comes from, but I'm just still saying, I think, man, yeah.
No, I get it. And I hope, if you're listening, you hear, I'm not trying to stir up something or arguing against it. I think depending on your context, and we've said this about everything, depending on your context and this, that may be different for you. And I think it's just important. I would say whatever your philosophy right now of your church is towards that, you need to, have those
Yeah, you do need to match up to that. You don't need to go, yeah, I mean, and I'm not dogging if you are in a place where there's an expectation that you only take, the super committed. That's fine.
Or even if you don't agree with that and you disagree, that's fine. You can disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
You could.
I mean, you'd be wrong. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding, mostly. So
that's great.
So funny. Yeah. So that's that. I mean, just leading up to the trip, though, being intentional with that, and you could also add in there giving them maybe some quiet times to do ahead of time. You could text those out to them every day or text them reminders.
Yeah,
all those
that's
things
great.
matter.
No, that's super good.
It's intentional.
And do you have do you do like a
Hey, side note, YM360 has a deal, a mission trip book.
Yeah, it's good.
That does that. That is before, during, and after.
It's like a 4-week thing. I think it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks before, 1 week during, and 1 week after.
It's good. It's so good.
Yeah, we were just talking about that this week, actually, in the office. Do you have like a group, like a message or a place where you stick everybody in, or is that just kind of?
I mean, it's all over. For us, it's like
you're all over the place. Yeah,
communication. I mean, you're emailing, texting.
Yeah, okay.
Announcing the whole smack.
Do you have a framework for those? You're saying minimum of 4. Is there like a general? Okay, like you're going to cover this in the first one, this in the second, this in the third, this in the fourth.
We do.
Do you want to share any of that? Is it like general principle enough?
It's probably too much to share right now. I mean,
or just like what are some things that like you? I mean, you're going to talk about obviously the work you're going to be doing.
I'll give you the quick version. So Dallas. So it's all about where you're going, right? So
Sure.
For us going to Dallas, Texas, we know that part of what we have to do is we have to get our kids into family groups, but they also are assigned to teams because while we're in Dallas every afternoon, we meet with Mission Arlington and we do Backyard Bible Club. They call it Rainbow Express. And at Rainbow Express, you've got to have a couple kids doing worship. You have to have a couple kids doing rec. You have to have a couple kids doing Bible study. You have to have a couple kids doing craft and memory verse. So we break our family groups. Every family group has a couple kids from each of those teams. There's a lot of words, I know. So we train those teams in the 3 weeks. We do about 5 weeks altogether, but the 3 weeks is all about getting ready, starting to get ready for that Rainbow Express. We just had our 4th meeting, and at our 4th meeting, we did what we call a soft run through of Rainbow Express, where the kids started to piece together everything they had learned in their teams. And the family group leaders, started to script out, here's what a typical hour and a half of Rainbow Express is going to look like. Our last meeting is next Wednesday before we go on the trip, 2 days before we go on the trip. And we've been promoting this for a while. It'll be what we're calling a run, like a full dress rehearsal run through, where they'll actually do without kids present, they'll do a Rainbow Express and they'll do a run through. So there is intentionality behind each one, but it would be hard for me to tell you what ours is. I think what you have to do is you have to look at what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And you have to prepare accordingly. Now, here's where it's going to get challenging. You may end up saying, well, we're just going to Pittsburgh and we're not really doing a thing like that. we're serving in these food pantries in the morning and this other thing in the afternoon, this clothes closet in the afternoon. And that's our mission trip. Well, it is kind of hard to spend 2 hours, 5 weeks in a row preparing for that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe what you do is you meet an hour instead and you do 4 weeks and you
do some team building. You do some
just do team building. You work on building the heart, kind of stuff.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah. Preparing them to encounter those that are like less.
I would say don't get too hung up on the how long each one is or how many days, but rather just the intentionality of
being prepared,
meeting some before the trip to build that group, so that when you meet for the first time to get on the bus, you've already got some momentum going into that trip. That's huge.
Yeah.
And that will help with discipleship because you're ultimately already starting to build that.
Yep.
If nothing else, just getting together, and I mean this seriously, if nothing else, just getting together to pray together for the trip
absolutely
is huge. Huge. Yeah. And we do that every time.
That's good. Okay,
so during the trip.
I was going to say, what about during?
Okay, so during the trip, you have to be intentional about meeting during the trip. I know you're worn out and you're tired, but you've got to have church time. An intentional moment at the end of the day where you say, we're getting back together. Now, I will say this also, Jody. I purposefully I try to be very careful about mixing announcements and church time together. Like, I don't want to have just a big meeting where we're talking about our strategies and admin stuff, but rather I try to say, okay, I need to tell y'all some stuff, or I'm going to save it to the end. But the main thing we're about to do is we got a guy with a guitar. We're going to sing some together. We're going to do a devotional together tonight. We're going to get you in your family group. I'm going to give you some questions to talk about around in your family groups. We're going to have some share time. Hey, what's God teaching you? What do you see God doing? Jody, I'm not exaggerating. At camp and at mission trips, hands down, in my top 3 favorite youth ministry moments ever are those moments. Like if you say, what are, I love teaching on stage on Sunday mornings. That's probably in my top 3 as well. But leading church time at camp and at mission trips and being able to react to what I sense the Spirit is doing and ask questions and getting kids to talk about that out loud. Dude, I don't know about you, but I've seen some of the coolest moments ever.
Oh, yeah.
In those moments where kids just finally get it. It's like, click.
Well, the nice thing about on a mission trip is that they're typically experiencing so many things so fast that they don't always, or they're not able to always keep their guard up because they don't know how to process it. So you get a lot of real honest moments. So that's good. Yeah. So that's in the evenings.
So just make sure you're meeting, and obviously make sure you have quiet times, make sure you have devotional times. And it's easy to get busy and not make time for that, but you have to make sure you're giving them time to spend time in the Word every morning. And it'd be great if you could customize that.
So we put together a book typically for our folks that are going. Like,
we do as well.
And so we do a couple things in that. We,
you put pictures in yours of the kids?
No, but we should.
Yeah, we do, dude. It's awesome, man. You put together like a little trip book, tour book, we call it. Pictures of everybody going on the trip and devotionals and.
Yeah, so we do the
schedule and all that stuff, man.
And the schedule's in there, and then kind of whatever basic rules or reminders like, hey, drink plenty of water today. And then we also use that, we kind of leverage those morning quiet time stuff that's in there to help coach them through the day. Like we know, like, okay, Tuesday, you're going to be tired. Wednesday, you're going to be tired of everybody. Like you're going to be
totally
done.
Day 3, man. Day 3 is terrible.
Yeah. So just reminders. Hey, listen, people are going to start getting on your nerves today. Or if you're out of the country and you've got kids who are going out of the country for the first time, like experiencing that culture. Okay. If you find yourself being really quiet and really withdrawn, like recognize that there's a lot to process, push through that, fight through that. Don't hide from it. So we'll typically try to do that a little bit in those journals too, and then lead that into some time in the Word for them each day. And then we'll say those things obviously to the group as a whole, but I've found it to be more effective well, it's just good to double up for one, but them kind of processing that on their own has been really helpful for us. That's good.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, those books are good, man. That can be, and you gotta be smart with that, and put their names on them, and you'll have to decide whether or not you take them up each time, and you need to bring some extras.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll give you a pro tip too for quiet times. You are going to have a kid lose their book. You just are. Whether that's a camp or mission trip or whatever, it's going to happen. Instead of fighting that too much, I would just say always have extra copies of that day's quiet time.
Yeah.
With you, so that you can just hand that out to a kid and they can still do their quiet time. You're also going to have a kid forget their Bible, and you don't want them on their phone. So go ahead and have the scripture for that day on a sheet of paper on the back of that Devo as well.
Yep.
Just super easy. So, but yeah, just meeting during the week. And then I would say this, training you, making sure you and your people know, because you've cast the vision, that they are having intentional conversations with every kid on the trip about what's happening in their life.
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
But it's just as simple as that you're going to be shooting to have those conversations. Hey man, what's God teaching this week? How's your week going? Feel like God's saying anything to you? Just being intentional about that during the trip.
Love that.
And then after the trip, always a bonus if that book maybe has maybe a week's worth of quiet times, of follow-up quiet times that you put together there. You could do something like that, offering quiet times. But I would say this, a celebration Sunday of some type. So if you get back on a Friday, maybe that following Sunday in Sunday school or whatever you have on Sunday mornings, or whenever your event is, maybe it's Wednesday night, I don't know, Sunday night, who knows, whatever you do, dedicating some of that time to celebrating the trip that just happened and having share time in the group. Again, it's telling the story.
Now, would you open that up to anybody, or would you have certain students that you would like?
Oh, I want those kids that didn't. I want those kids that didn't go in the room, man.
Yeah, but I mean, like, as far as who's sharing, are you listening from your family group leaders for certain stories that you want to highlight, or you just say?
I mean, you could do either way. Sometimes in our bigger trips where we're on stage, kind of moment, we bring up a couple people and interview them. But I'm a big fan of doing church time basically back home.
Yeah.
Where you're just opening it up and seeing what God does. Cool. You got to learn how to ask good questions though. And you also have to learn how to keep them on,
on task,
keep on. Yeah. And also, hey, it also helps if you use the group picture rule. Like if you want everybody to do a serious picture first, you make sure you let them know that you're also going to let them do a silly one at the end.
Right.
And that'll often eliminate any goofiness in the first part of the picture. Same thing with share time. If you say, hey, we're going to start off with a couple fun stories. What's something crazy that happened on the trip? Let everybody get that out of their system. And now we're talking about serious.
Right. That's good.
What did God teach on the trip?
That's a great tip.
God told me that Johnny's nuts. That's not what we're doing right now.
Yeah, God didn't need to tell you that.
Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah. You could also, though, if you didn't want to do it, you could have and I love our high school ministry does this with our spring break trip. A couple weeks after, they have a reunion where parents get invited. And if kids have made a decision on the trip, there's a baptism service as a part of that. But it's a big share time, show the camp video or show the trip video, all that. It's good.
That's good. Do you and again, sometimes you can do this and sometimes you can't. Depends on your context and where you are even and really even what the work you're doing. But do you typically take someone who's designated as like photographer, video person, if you can, or do you just compile?
We try. We haven't always been successful at that because the resource is not always there.
Sure.
But I would say this, you've got a teenager that could do it.
Sure.
I mean, there's surely a teenager that can edit a video on an Apple product, or whatever. So just to do something, I think is big.
That's a question I get asked a lot. So cool. Well, any last thoughts or
good? Obviously, if you can have somebody come tell that story, it's great.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a must-have, but it's something to consider if you're able to. Would be good.
Heck yeah. Then part of that also would be, here's what's great. once you start building up this culture, it's not going to happen year 1 or 2. It's going to happen year 3 on.
Yeah.
But once you start building up this culture of we meet ahead of time, we meet in family groups, you're going to start having family groups that become lifelong friends. Maybe not lifelong, but at least middle school, high school friends. So we still have family groups that, like in 9th grade, they go on a trip together and they still get together every so often because they bonded that well.
Do you try to keep those groups the same year to year?
No, we mix them up every year.
Every year, so it's a different.
Every year, yeah.
Okay. Because I could see them going, I want to be with my family group from last year.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, not for us.
Well, that's good. Fair enough.
But I would just say this too, and I guess to be super fair about this, and this just came to my mind, and this is going to sound, this may sound a little, I hope this comes across right. I will tell you that part of this is you need to make sure you're doing good trips, though, in the first place.
Yeah.
I hit a moment about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, where I want to be careful. I'm not dogging. I don't mean this to rip on anybody. This is just where I was. I got tired of taking middle school students to places so they could cut grass, pull weeds, and sort clothes and not be in front of people. I hit a moment where I was like, man, I'm tired of taking kids and spending the resources that we're spending, doing what we're doing. And they're painting this house, and they're terrible at painting, but we're painting this house for this widow that belongs to this church. And really her church should be doing that actually anyway. And at the end of that, we've not really been around any lost people all week long. And we're calling this a mission trip. I just got tired of that. So I would just say, as a challenge, a potential frustrating you moment here, work hard at getting your kids in front of people.
Yeah.
The best you can, do block parties in apartments.
Yeah, we've done those. Those are easy.
Find an organization that allows you to do backyard Bible club type things. Somehow get in front of people that need to hear the gospel. And it's a challenge in the United States, but you can pull that off. If you work hard at that. So
yeah, and the only thing I would say is like, make
sure you work hard at it. Make sure you're doing good trips.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to put work into a mission trip. You're going to get out what you put in on that. But I would say, and I agree that you've got to pick good trips, but you have to start somewhere. So if you're at a place where you have no culture of missions or no culture of going on these trips, maybe your ideal trip isn't your first trip, but you still got to be mindful that it's a good trip. And so leverage what you can, but continue to work to make those deeper and get your kids out in front of people and have them sharing their faith. Because your kids will do things that your adults will never do. They're fearless, 100%. Man.
100%.
And if they don't do it as a student, they'll never do it as an adult. So you gotta get them serving. Gotta get them out there.
Yep.
Cool. Any final thoughts? We wrap up here.
No, I mean, I think that's kind of it. I mean, as far as I shared the wrap up part of that, and the family groups get together, the quiet times, and potential. Yeah. So I think I, covered that, but I think it's a great question that Josiah asked, though. And I think the key is that Josiah is asking it.
Yeah.
Which is, when you're doing a mission trip, asking yourself, how am I building discipleship into this? How am I building Jesus into this thing? Other than the fact that we're going on a mission trip. Because man, oh man, because it's a mission trip, you actually can leverage that to ask for a little extra from people. We want you to meet and prepare to go on this trip. We have to train for it. there's
Yeah.
just there's a real win there. So it's good. I love it,
agree.
man. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
Nah, super good. Really, really practical stuff for sure. So I think you'll be pleased.
Yeah, and I hope I'm not frustrating anybody. I know I'm kind of opinionated about some of that. I hope it's not.
Wait, you opinionated? No.
Shut up, Jody.
Never.
What you talking about, man?
No, I think it's good, and I think the big thing is to start somewhere and work toward something, and to do so intentionally and within the culture you're in, and you can stretch and grow, and over time, I love what you said there. You build a culture of going, and yeah, it gets easier over time. You're not reinventing the wheel every year, and there's an expectation there too. So cool. Well, all right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in and listening and hanging with us on that. If you haven't already, make sure that you do subscribe to the show. Jump in the podcast group, the Longer Haul Facebook podcast group there with us. You can ask your questions there, like Josiah did today, and share maybe even your own thoughts or tips that you have going on there. Make sure to head over to ym360.com, use the promo code Longer Haul to save 20% and check out all their stuff, because like we said, they have a phenomenal resource for this specific topic in that. And then big shout out again to folks down at Student Ministry Network in Georgia, studentministrynetwork.com. You can check out all the stuff they've got going on there. So I think that does it for today.
Yeah, man. Good. Thanks for jumping and listening to us today. It was good. Good episode.
Sweet. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.
Later.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.